And the BAFTA goes to Damien Chazelle.
Before the first moments of his indie filmmaking debut, Guy and Madeline on Park Bench, it is achingly apparent that Damien Chazelle has been waiting his entire life to express himself and his specific set interests through the medium of cinema. The Oscar-winning wonderkind director has said since earliest childhood experiences watching Disney classics such as Cinderella on TV, he has only ever possessed one enduring ambition in life: to make movies himself.
It was funny, I used to hate musicals as a kid, and for that very same reason I hated them as a kid, I started to love them later.
His obsessive artistic compulsion may seem like an obvious prerequisite for any aspiring writer-director to have, but Chazelle's films show something beyond this. They are so clearly a work of a longtime cinephile who simply cannot hide the uncontained exuberance that he has for its chosen medium of expression. His passion for cinema is bursting in every frame, and his sophisticated knowledge of the mechanics of film, cinematic form is ablaze in every storytelling choice he makes on screen. Lively jazz music, characterized with repressed artistic ambition being constantly tested by creative hostile circumstances, and elaborate tracking shots that are as immaculately composed as the precise musical score that they are set to. These are just some of the few stylistic hallmarks of Damien Chazelle films. With his latest, most prestigious project yet, Babylon, starring Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt, coming out on the rapidly approaching award season friendly date for Christmas Day, let us briefly consider the essential qualities of Chazelle's work, and more specifically, what technical and formal elements his style have led to the growing filmography, such as being an object of discussion in the greater film fan community over the last decade or so.
I'm sorry.
No, stay.
When breaking down the opening sequence of his breakout Oscar-winning jazz drama Whiplash for the New York Times, Anatomy of a Scene series, Chazelle said that with regard to how much care and consideration goes into how he chooses to begin his movies.
The way movies begin is so crucial to me. It's that moment where you really have the audience totally spellbound. You haven't lost them yet.
All four Chazelle feature-length films begin with utterly arresting sequences. These cinematic opening chapters are all distinct from one another in tone, but are designed with the same specific purpose in mind: to draw the audience into a story from the very first frame. An excellent example is found in La La Land, which opens with a proverbial bang. The opening musical number, Another Day of Sun, provides a dazzling, nearly 5-minute-long musical sequence, featuring dozens of expertly choreographed extras, all hemmed in a grand single-take tracking shot, which spans a large portion of the eastbound 105 freeway in Los Angeles. Considering that Chazelle draws so much inspiration from jazz musicians, the sequence is akin to a budding young saxophonist stepping onto the stage, clearing his throat, and blasting his most splendidly ambitious solo he could possibly muster to kick off his decorative recital. The foreboding opening of Whiplash, on the other hand, contrasts starkly with the sun-kissed glamour of Another Day of Sun. The dramatic jazz thriller opens with a sustained black scream, sparsely accompanied by an increasingly unveiled staccato rhythm of a drum roll-over tightened snare drum. The starkly hypnotic cadence of the drum roll gives the creepingly dolly shot that glides gradually down the dark hallway towards the tragically ambitious lead character, Andrew Newman, Miles Teller, as he foils tirelessly behind the imposing outline of his drum kit. Chazelle has a deep understanding of the mechanics of filmmaking that feels instantaneously transportive, as well as profound respect for the immersive quality of the theatrical experience. First Man hits a harsher, more brutalistic opening note, than any of Chazelle's other more musically inclined films, as opposed to opening with some kind of discriminable melody that eases the audiences into the general vibe of the film. In First Man, Chazelle instead elects to mercilessly drop his audience straight into the first-person, pulse-pounding real nightmare scenario of Neil Armstrong barreling through the early morning skies over the Mojave Desert, narrowly avoiding his own death inside the cacophonous confines of the X-15 hypersonic rocket-powered NASA aircraft.
I'm down.
By replacing the typical aesthetic elements of his directorial style, prominent musical score and sweeping camera movements, with overwhelmingly naturalistic Foley work, and a frenetic handheld camera shot from Armstrong's perspective in the cockpit, Chazelle demonstrates his facility to craft sequences of heightened intensity, using only the most basic audiovisual fundamentals of cinematic storytelling. All of his opening sequences are emblematic of Chazelle's apparent willingness to swing wildly in terms of form and tone between his respective films. This unpredictable quality is also part of why every new Chazelle film feels like an event for savvy film lovers worldwide.
Justin was sort of there every day by our side.
Chazelle's relationship with his full-time composer, Justin Hurwitz, dates back to Harvard University, where the filmmaking composing duo met as students, where they shortly began planting the earliest seeds of projects like La La Land, years before they would ever come to fruition. The significance of Hurwitz's contribution to Damien Chazelle formula cannot be overstated.
Justin's music helps me figure out what the movie is going to be at its core.
For Chazelle and Hurwitz, the score and the film itself cannot exist properly without one another. In fact, one of their films, the screenplay and the score were actually written simultaneously. The filmmaking composing dynamic duo is a genuine act of creative symbiosis and one that is unique to their cinematic form. La La Land's now iconic golden hour dance sequence, which overlooks the LA skyline at twilight, is simply a pretty image until it is set to Hurwitz's beautiful, beguiling duet, A Lovely Night.
I know you look so cute in your polyester suit.
It's wool.
You're right, I'd never fall for you at all.
There are obviously a fair amount of notable examples from film history of filmmakers who have a stylistically symbolic relationship with their composers. After all, Sergio Leone's grand vision of the American West is only elevated to godlike status when Ennio Morricone's epic score is laid over it. A lofty and grossly premature equivalency perhaps, but in my defense takes for instance what may be the single most impressive sequence Chazelle has ever put together on film. Newman's breathtaking and redemptive performance of John Watson's Caravan, a piece chosen by Hurwitz, that brings Whiplash to an absolute electrifying close. The exacting and intense nature of the editorial pacing, stylization of the overhead stage lighting, and dramatic framing and blocking of this scene take all their cue, literally, from the swells, bridges, and breaks found in the musical score. In Grand Piano, a musical thriller written by Chazelle, the plot of the film centers around the conceit of a concert pianist, Elijah Wood, not flubbing a single note from his complicated piece, all to avoid being assassinated mid-performance. The list continues with La La Land, which is by its nature chock full of spectacular protracted sequences of bravura filmmaking that are conceived around Hurwitz's score. Aside from his technical ability as a filmmaker, as a screenwriter, Chazelle has proven that he can pen believable characters that possess all the widely different dispositions and personalities.
Not quite my tempo. It's all good. No worries. Here we go.
J.K. Simmons' Academy Award-winning portrayal of the ceaselessly tyrannical bandleader, Terrence Fletcher, who wages psychological warfare on Miles Teller's Newman, is emblematic of Chazelle's ability to conjure a volatile sense of venomous angst between two of his central characters.
Michelle, why is this loose?
Even in 10 Cloverfield Lane, a movie Chazelle has major screenwriting credits on, the character of Howard, John Goodman, is domineering, intimidating, and abjectly terrifying as the antagonist gets.
No, Jamal. You be trippin'.
Conversely, a character like Mia in La La Land is funny, charming, and deeply sympathetic to the audience in her earnest pursuit of a struggling acting career. Chazelle and fellow screenwriter John Singer's melancholic depiction of Neil Armstrong in First Man is as taciturn, profoundly introspective man who stymies his eternal traumas through sheer force of his own will is as standout characterization in his filmography as well. Chazelle's characters exist in a wide spectrum of humanity that ranges from the kindest, most humane gestures of decency to the cruelest acts of moral depravity.
Damien is an auteur. He is one of the greats of our generation.
Many have speculated that in a post-COVID, predominantly streaming-based filmmaking paradigm, the last era of promising young auteur directors in Hollywood has already passed us. Debate the validity of that anxious prognostication as we may, it is undoubtedly difficult to deny that cinema lovers around the world are still holding their collective breath for a new generational crop of prematurely gifted filmmakers to emerge in the midst of the social media era which we find ourselves in.
When did you know you wanted to make movies?
I've never wanted to do anything else. I can't remember ever wanting to do anything else.
Amongst all the proclamations of doom and gloom, we must remind ourselves that filmmakers like Damien Chazelle are out there. In fact, he belongs to an unofficial class of auteurs under the age of 40, who are all unquestionably born to the medium of cinema. Ryan Coogler, Greta Gerwig, Lua Wang, Robert Eggers, and Sadie Brothers, etc.
Time to go make a movie.
For a director who is still only 37 years of age, Chazelle has a tremendous grasp on the history of the film industry and a greater understanding of the arc of cinematic history. It is safe to assume that most filmmakers and artists around this age are not as profoundly influenced by 20th century-based artistic movements in film and music like the French New Wave and the American Jazz Age as he is.
It's extraordinary. Again, it's something only movies can do. Only movies can make that moment.
Still, given his Celtic, somewhat anachronistic influences, Chazelle has remained admirably disciplined enough never to allow himself to wade in the inevitably stagnant waters of filmmaking as an act of pure nostalgia for too long. He is an auteur with a deft directorial hand and a nimble sense of tonal control that allows him the ability to craft compelling characters and scenarios that are built to flourish on the big screen.